What if I told you that the greatest proof of God's power is the very thing skeptics cite to doubt him, that Satan still walks the earth? Today on the Faithful Scribe, we'll unravel why the Almighty refuses to erase the devil with a single breath, and why that choice secures the future of every free creature. Stick around, because by the end, you'll see evil, suffering, and your own battles through a lens so radical, you may never read Scripture the same again. Little known fact to prime your imagination. In the ancient book of Job, likely composed before Moses wrote Genesis, Satan is not barred from heaven, but summoned into God's council, addressing the Creator face to face. The accuser retained diplomatic clearance after his revolt. That unsettling detail unlocks the courtroom drama behind everything you and I endure. Ready? Let's step into eternity's most gripping trial. Return with me beyond ticking clocks, beyond galaxies, to the first instant when God's voice birthed an army of blazing spirits. Each angel emerged breathtaking and most dangerously autonomous. Love without liberty is theater. Liberty without loyalty invites catastrophe. Highest among them stood Lucifer, light-bearer, covered, Ezekiel says, in gold and shimmering stones, appointed guardian of God's mountain. But brilliance can incubate hubris. A single self-awareness crystallized into comparison, comparison into grievance. Isaiah captures the mounting ambition. I will ascend. I will make myself like the Most High. Pride metastasized inside heaven's most gifted mind. Words became whispers, whispers became slogans. 1/3 of the host endorsed Lucifer's promise of self-rule, imagining a heaven liberated from hierarchy. Picture corridors of living light turning into campaign trails. Friend against friend, loyalty bleeding into doubt. In that volatile hush, the universe braced for God's reply. He could have spoken one word and unmade the rebel, but doing so would have taught every remaining angel that disagreement equals annihilation. Free will would shrivel into survival instinct, and love would taste like coercion. Instead, God chose exposure over erasure. The plot would proceed. Characters would reveal themselves by choice, not command. Heaven isn't a white cloud choir. It is a society older than time, and the defection hit like a supernova. Angelic artisans abandoned workshops. Strategists weighed battle plans. Infants, yes, Jewish tradition speaks of angelic youths, looked up to confused mentors. Cosmic order trembled, yet God waited, letting decision carve identity into every spirit. All creation held a collective breath, waiting. Remember this moment as the curtain rises. True freedom is both God's most lavish gift and his greatest calculated risk. What unfolds next will prove whether liberty, untethered from love, blooms into glory or burns into ash. Picture the throne room after the expulsion. 2/3 of heaven stand loyal yet disturbed, their understanding of God's character hanging by a thread. If omnipotence deletes dissent like a computer virus, then obedience is merely enlightened self-preservation. The Almighty understands psychology. He knows love coerced is love corrupted. So he answers rebellion with a courtroom, not a firing squad. Earth becomes Exhibit A. Here God can showcase what genuine autonomy chooses when cut loose from divine wisdom, and, in parallel, what redemption looks like when grace intervenes. Every era magnifies the contrast. Flood and rainbow, slavery and exodus, exile and return. Cycles that prove two truths simultaneously. Evil is self-destructive, and God is patient beyond comprehension. Think of Satan's access to heaven in Job. God allows the accuser to test Job's integrity, not to satisfy cruelty, but to unmask Satan's methods before the onlooking universe. When Job's perseverance triumphs, the prosecution's argument collapses under its own weight. Some argue God could limit the spectacle's duration, yet even a brief tyranny can fertilize lingering doubt. For eternal security, the evidence must be overwhelming, exhaustive, indisputable. In a cosmos without clocks, God can afford time. What he cannot afford is mistrust reborn a billion years from now. Consider the ripple effect on angelic culture. Young angels, created since the fall, still form opinions. They audit humanity like scholars review a landmark case. Your decisions and mine become testimonies in their curriculum. God's theater of freedom spans dimensions. Every scene, from Eden's bite to your phone screen, is evidence for the ultimate verdict, for all eternity. Pause and reflect. If divine patience has waited millennia for cosmic clarity, might your life's unresolved prayers be part of that grand disclosure? What story is heaven telling through your endurance today? Leap forward to a Palestinian hillside where Jesus declares, "I saw Satan fall like lightning from heaven." Those words are not nostalgic. They are legal disclosure. The Son testifies that the accuser's standing is already doomed. Yet proceedings continue until every witness is heard. That includes you. Paul calls believers spectacles to angels. Translation: your daily acts are live-streamed to heavenly galleries. When you forgive someone who doesn't deserve it, you introduce evidence that grace outguns revenge. When you cling to integrity under pressure, you undermine Lucifer's claim that creatures obey God only for reward. Each time you choose love over ego, the prosecution winces. Need more insights like this? Smash that subscribe button now and ring the bell, because the Faithful Scribe uncovers threads most commentators never notice. Now zoom in on Calvary. The cross isn't just personal salvation. It is Exhibit B, a public, irreversible demonstration that God will absorb pain rather than inflict tyranny. Satan's governing philosophy, take, deceive, kill, was unmasked by the innocent blood he demanded. Colossians says the cross made a public spectacle of powers and authorities, triumphing over them. The courtroom gasped, the defense rested, yet the verdict waits for you to weigh in. Question: what moment in your life most convinced you that love surpasses force? Drop your story below. Your testimony might tip someone else's scales today. Even mundane choices count. Clicking away from toxic content, returning honest change to a cashier, praying for an enemy, heaven records these micro defeats of darkness. Imagine angels leaning forward whenever you face a crossroads, freedom wielded for good. Their wonder grows, and the prosecutor's arguments shrink truly, one decision at a time. Remember, trials are won by accumulated evidence. What piece will you contribute before the gavel falls? Revelation steps onto the stage like the final act of a courtroom drama. Seals break, trumpets blast, bowls pour, each symbol a procedural motion advancing the case toward judgment. Yet between the plagues, John hears a staggering proclamation. The hour of his judgment has come, and worship him who made heaven and earth. Notice it doesn't say the judgment of humans, but his judgment. God welcomes scrutiny of his own actions. That is why the timeline stretches. Divine justice must satisfy not only victims, but observers. Every argument, every piece of evidence, every motive will stand transparent. When the books open, the universe will unanimously agree. God's way is life. Satan's alternative is entropy in slow motion. Consider the 1,000 years, often called the millennium, described in Revelation 20. The redeemed reign with Christ, examining records. Think about that. Humans, once lower than angels, are invited to audit divine decisions. Nothing is hidden. Only a leader utterly confident in his integrity would expose himself to that level of peer review. Finally, fire descends, not as a tantrum, but as surgery, cauterizing the last trace of rebellion. The prophet Nahum promises, affliction shall not rise up the second time. Why? Because there will be no philosophical fuel left to ignite it. Question: if you could open the heavenly books today, what mystery of history would you most want clarified? Type your curiosity. We read every comment and may tackle your topic in a future episode. Until that day, creation lives in a pregnant pause. Romans says even the planets groan, craving resolution. Hurricanes, heartbreaks, alarms, all echoes of a system awaiting final sentence. Yet the delay that pains us also guards us. More time for testimonies, rescues, new minds change before the case closes. A doctrine about angels might feel abstract until you realize it reframes every traffic jam, every heartbreak, every headline. The ongoing controversy explains both why evil persists and why your response to evil matters. You are not stuck in meaningless chaos. You are sworn in as a witness. When you wrestle with addiction, you're proving whether love can liberate where chains once ruled. When you champion justice for the marginalized, you demonstrate God's character more loudly than any sermon. James calls faith without works dead, not because works earn salvation, but because lifeless evidence cannot persuade a jury. You may ask, I'm one person? Does it truly move the needle? Picture a courtroom where the final testimony finally sways the jury. Heaven counts one as priceless. Remember the widow's 2 copper coins. Jesus framed that gift as decisive evidence of authentic trust. So practical counsel, guard your imagination. Media that glamorizes greed or lust feeds Exhibit C for the accuser. Cultivate gratitude. Thanking God in adversity videotapes hope for the watching worlds. Feed on Scripture. Every promise you cling to is another document in the defense file. Question: which single habit could you adopt this week to signal your allegiance to God's kingdom? Share it below, and let's inspire each other. The stakes are cosmic, but the battleground is intimate. Your next thought, your next word. Live it like your testimony will be quoted in eternity's closing arguments. Because, according to Scripture, it will be. If you feel overwhelmed, remember you're not alone. Hebrews describes a cloud of witnesses cheering you on. Angelic scribes record stumbles and recovery, not to shame, but to celebrate growth. A surrendered life, scars and all, disarms cynicism more than sterile perfection could. We've traced the enigma of a God who permits his greatest enemy to breathe. For now, the answer is not weakness, but strategy. Love must be chosen, justice must be witnessed, freedom must be vindicated. By allowing evil its moment, God ensures it will never rise again. So the cosmic clock ticks toward a verdict in which every question finds clarity, every tear finds context, and every loyal heart finds home. Until then, remember, your ordinary Tuesday can echo louder than ancient trumpets if lived in faith. Choose honesty over expedience, compassion over contempt, worship over worry. In doing so, you become living proof that God's government deserves to last forever. Thank you for watching The Faithful Scribe. If this exploration challenged you, share it with a friend who's wrestling with the problem of evil. Together, we'll keep turning pages most readers skip until the final chapter writes itself in glory. Today,